In this video, I'm going to round up a few of the best techniques for dodging and burning to selectively lighten or darken parts of an image, which is a really useful skill not just for black and white photos but for any type of image. I'm going to start by making a couple of changes to this image here in Camera Raw. So I'm going to right click it here in Bridge and choose Open in Camera Raw. And one of the best tools for making selective changes to an image is the adjustment brush within the toolbar here. We can grab that, and then all we have to do is to change the settings over here. So we'll click the plus icon here on exposure to load it with a positive exposure value, and then we simply paint over an area of the image and notice how we're able to lighten it. And of course we can also adjust any of these other settings here, so we could perhaps choose to up the clarity slightly, maybe knock down the highlights, and experiment with these settings until we're happy. Now, another great tool for making selective adjustments is the graduated filter tool, which you'll find next to the adjustment brush in the toolbar, and this allows us to blend a before and after of the effect. So I'm going to try loading it with negative exposure this time, and then simply drag down from the sky there to darken it slightly. I can hold shift to keep the lines perfectly horizontal as I drag. And then if it's darkening parts of the image that I don't want it to affect, I can go to the brush option here, hit Y to view the blend, and then I can paint to subtract areas from it. As long as I've got the negative brush selected over here, I can subtract parts from the effect. So I'm going to subtract these areas over the hills which are already dark enough. I don't really need to darken them anymore. So those are a couple of really useful tools for dodging and burning and making selective adjustments in Camera Raw. Now let's hit Open Image to bring it into Photoshop. Now the dodge and burn tools in the tools panel over here allow us to darken or lighten parts of the image, and we can choose to affect the shadows, midtones or highlights when using each tool. We also want to keep the exposure quite low whenever we're using these tools, and that allows us to build up the effect gradually. And I can just paint down over here to darken that area slightly to give the image a subtle vignette around here. And when using either tool, we can hold Alt to temporarily switch to the other. So by holding Alt, I'm now dodging parts of the image to lighten them, even though I have the burn tool selected. Now, when we're using the dodge and burn tools like this, we're making changes to our image that can be quite difficult to undo. A more non-destructive way of working would be to create a new layer and work on that. So I can hold Alt and click the Create New Layer icon here to bring up my new layer options, and let's call it grey. And we're going to go to the mode drop down here and go for overlay, and we want to check this option here, fill with overlay neutral color, and hit OK. What that does is give me a new layer filled with grey and set to the blend mode overlay, so it's invisible at the moment. It's not affecting my image in any way, but then I can paint with either white or black, or with the dodge and burn tools on this layer to lighten or darken parts of my image. So I'm going to grab the brush tool and set my foreground colour to black. I'll hit 1 to bring the brush opacity to 10%. And I can use the left and right square bracket keys on my keyboard to resize the brush tip. So I'll go for a large brush tip, and notice how as I paint, I'm actually able to burn in parts of the image like this, and you see those marks appear on that grey layer. And I can hit X to switch my foreground color to white, and then paint to dodge parts like this. So that's another useful way of dodging and burning, and of course because we're using a separate layer, our original image is preserved on the layer underneath. Another great way to make selective changes is with adjustment layers, which you can access via this little icon at the bottom of the layers panel here. So I'm going to go for curves and drag down, and notice how we're able to darken the entire image, and we could perhaps just lift the highlights slightly to add a touch more punch. And then I can hit Command or Control and I to invert the layer mask on that layer to black, which completely hides the effect. But I can then grab the brush tool, and as long as this layer mask thumbnail is highlighted here, I can paint over the image to reveal or hide parts. So I can paint with white to reveal the effect, and let's just hit 0 to bring the opacity back up to 100%. You see I can reveal the effect in any areas that I want, and then hit X if I want to hide it, like this. So using adjustment layers like this is really useful for making selective changes to parts of the image. And of course, because it's an adjustment layer, we can double click the icon here and go back in and change the settings at any point. And one other method that can also be really useful for dodging and burning is with the use of blend modes. We can create any layer we like. Perhaps a levels adjustment layer will work, but we won't make any changes to that layer. Instead, we'll go to the blend mode drop down here and change the blend mode from normal to something like screen. And that allows us to lighten the entire image. And again, we can hit Command or Control and I to invert the layer mask on that layer to black and hide the effect. And as before, just use the brush tool. I'll use white this time to reveal parts of the effect over any areas that we like. And of course, we can use the layer opacity to control the strength. If we wanted to darken areas, we would go for multiply instead of screen, which gives us a burning in effect, but I'll leave it set to screen. So there we go, that's 6 different methods for dodging and burning. You've got the adjustment brush, the graduated filter, the dodge and burn tools, the neutral grey layer, a combination of adjustment layers and masks, and the multiply and screen blend modes.